Canto 10. Onward, down the narrow pathway between the suffering and the city's ramparts, my master leads with me behind. I asked, "Paragon of virtue, you who lead me as you know best through these evil spirals, speak to me, satisfy my need to know. Might they be seen, the people lying here in these tombs? The lids are already raised, and no one is guarding them." He replied, "They will all be locked up when they return from Jehoshaphat, and bring back the flesh that they left behind in the world above. This plot is reserved for Epicurus and his followers, all those who believe the soul dies when the body gives up life. So the question you put to me just now will be answered while we're here, and that question you've avoided asking." I said, "Master, I hide what's in my heart only to cut my chatter, as you've urged."
"O Tuscan, crossing this flaming city alive, and so elegantly spoken, be so kind as to pause here for a while. Your accent reveals you as a native of that noble city which I treated harshly in my time, perhaps too harshly."
This sound burst from a tomb so suddenly, I drew closer to my master in fear. "Turn around," he said. "What are you doing? That's Farinata, risen to his feet. Look, you can see him there from the waist up." But my eyes were already fixed on his, as he puffed out his chest, lifting his chin at hell, as if displaying supreme scorn. My guide promptly pushed me between the tombs towards him, saying, "Choose your words with care." When I was standing by his sepulchre, he eyed me for a while, then haughtily demanded,
"Tell me, who were your forebears?"
Glad to oblige, I hid nothing from him, but opened up and told him everything. His eyebrows rose a little, then he said,
"They were furious enemies of mine, my people and my friends. I scattered them on 2 occasions.
"If they were expelled," I answered him, "they still returned each time from all sides, an art yours never mastered." Another shade then emerged beside him, only visible as far as his chin, for he had, I think, risen to his knees. He peered around me, as if expecting someone else had come there along with me. And when he realized he hoped in vain, he said through tears, "If your great intellect lets you travel here through this blind prison, then where is my son? Why not here with you?" "I have not come here through my own powers," I replied. "The one waiting there guides me, perhaps to the one who was scorned by your Guido." His words and the style of his punishment meant his name was already known to me, hence I could give him such a full reply. "Was scorned, you say?" he cried, rising to his feet. "Is he no longer amongst the living? The sweet light of day does not strike his eyes?" When he noticed how I hesitated before I gave an answer, he fell back into his tomb and was not seen again. The stately shade, at whose request I stopped, remained unconcerned. He did not turn his head or lean to see what happened, but took up where we left off speaking. He carried on.
"If they were slow in mastering that art, that tortures me far more than this bed does. But the face of she who rules these realms here shall brighten less than 50 times before you learn what an art it is to master."
"Now, since I hope your seed find peace some day, loose this knot that keeps my reason tangled," I asked him then. "As I understand it, you know the future before it happens, but knowledge of the present is denied."
"We see like the far-sighted see,"
he said.
"Only events in the distance are clear, for God's light illuminates these for us. When things draw near, and as they happen, our minds are blank. We would not know you lived if others had not brought us word of it. So when the doors of future time shut tight, the self-awareness we do have will fail."
Then, regretting what I had done, I said, "Would you please tell the one fallen back down that his son is still among the living? If I was slow replying to him, let him know it was because in my mind I struggled with the point you just answered. By now my master was recalling me, so I quickly asked the shade to tell me the names of those who shared the tomb with him. He said,
"More than 1,000 lie with me. Frederick II and the Cardinal are among them. The rest I will not name."
With that his figure disappeared below. Pondering the menace in what he said, I walked back then to the ancient poet. He moved ahead, and as we went along he said to me, "Why are you so dismayed?" I told him all the thoughts that filled my mind. "Remember what you heard against you here, and note well," he wisely commanded me, lifting his finger, "when you stand before the glow of her whose eyes see everything, you shall understand your life's quest through her." Following that, he turned and left the wall, going down a path towards a valley whose disgusting stench rose up to meet us. Canto 11. High up on a steep bank's curving rim, formed by great shattered rocks set in a ring, we came upon a still more dreadful place. Because of the foul overflow of stink vomited from the depth of the abyss, we retreated behind a massive tomb upon the lid of which I saw inscribed these words: "I hold Pope Anastasius, whom Fortinus lured from the rightful road." "We must delay our descent a little until our senses have become more used to this foul air. Then we can ignore it," my master said to me. I answered him, "Let us find some means so we do not waste time." "I've thought of that," he said, and then began. "Within this circle of broken boulders there are 3 smaller circles like this one, and all of them packed full with damned spirits. So just the sight of them will be enough. Listen now to how and why they're prisoned. All malice has injustice as its end, which by fraud or force hurts someone else. Now fraud, as a vice of mankind alone, displeases God the more. The fraudulent are placed lower to suffer greater pain. All the first circle is for the violent, but since violence may have 3 targets, it is constructed in 3 different zones, of violence to God, or to oneself, or to one's neighbours, both them and their goods. I shall explain. A man may kill or wound his neighbour. His property may suffer violence by fire, destruction, or theft. So the homicidal are tormented in the first ring with malicious wounders, vandals, and those who destroy or plunder, divided into their various groups. Man can lay a violent hand on himself or on his goods. So in the second zone, repenting uselessly, are those who would rob your world of themselves, or by gambling fritter away all their patrimony, or when they should be rejoicing, despair. There's violence against the deity, denying him at heart, cursing him, abusing nature and nature's bounty. So the smallest zone stamps with its seal the mark of sodomy and usury, and those who insult God, cursing him in their hearts. Fraud, which gnaws away at every conscience, is practised against another, by one who is trusted or one who has no trust. The latter form would only seem to break the bond of love which nature generates. Nestling in the second circle, therefore, are hypocrites, flatterers, magicians, counterfeiters, robbers, panders, and cheats, simonists, seducers, and all such filth. In the former type of fraud, not only is the love granted by nature dismissed, but the love which creates a special bond. So, in the smallest of all the circles, at the pivot point of the universe, the throne of Dis, the traitor is consumed. Master, your explanation is most clear, making plain the nature of this abyss and its inhabitants, I said. Tell me, the spirits held by the loathsome marsh, those swept up by the blast or threshed by the rain, those who clash and curse and clash together, why are they not punished in the city, flaming red, if God is angry with them? If he is not, then why do they suffer? He said to me, Do you not recall those sentences where Aristotle's ethics is so sure? The 3 states so repugnant to heaven, incontinence and malice and insane bestiality, and how incontinence is less offensive to God, earns less blame. Now think about this judgment, and recall those who suffer outside the city walls. Then you will see why they have been set apart from these malicious shades, and why the wrath of divine vengeance beats them more lightly. Oh, son, healer of every troubled spirit, your explanation gives me so much joy. To question pleases as much as knowing. But go back a little, I said to him, to where you say usury is a sin against God's goodness. Unravel that knot. Philosophy, to those that understand, he said, points out, and more than once, how nature, as it takes its course, follows the divine intelligence and its art. And if you search Aristotle's physics, early on in its pages, you will find your art, when it can, would follow nature, just like a pupil at his master's heels. Your art, then, is God's grandchild, so to speak. From these two, art and nature, man must grow, if you recall how Genesis begins. Because the usurer holds another way. Rejecting both nature and her student art, he invests his hope in something else. Now follow me. We should be moving on. Pisces on the horizon gleams and dances, and the plough is riding over the northwest wind. Ahead we may climb down the precipice. Canto 12. The spot we had reached to descend the bank was alpine steep. Reclining upon it was something quite appalling to the eyes, just like the landslide that battered the bank of the Adige, caused by either earthquake or erosion, which sent down rocks cascading from the peak of the mountain where it began to shatter on the plain in such a way that makes a pathway down. So was the passage down to that ravine. And at the edge of the shattered chasm lay stretched full length the infamy of Crete, the beast who was conceived in a false cow. Catching sight of us, he gnawed at his flesh like one convulsed by an inner fury. My guide cried to it, "Perhaps you worry you're seeing the Duke of Athens again, the one who came above to butcher you. Keep away, monster. This man does not come instructed by your sister. All he wants to do here is observe your punishments." And like a bull that breaks loose the moment it receives a fatal blow, twists and turns but cannot charge, I saw the Minotaur respond. My ever-wary guide shouted, "Head for the pass while he's still berserk!" So down we scrambled on the stony screes, which often moved and slipped beneath my feet with the pressure of their strange new burden. I was deep in thought as I clambered down, until he said, "You are thinking maybe about this ruined waste here, watched over by that beast whose fury I just subdued. Now let me tell you, when I came before, this far down in the lower deeps of hell, the rocky mess had not yet fallen down. However, if I remember it right, shortly before he came, who carried off from Dis the great spoil of the first circle, the deep foul pit so trembled everywhere, I thought the universe was touched by love, by which, according to one theory, the world has often resolved into chaos. That was the moment when the ancient rock toppled here, and in other places too. But look down the valley, for we are near the stream of blood which simmers its sinners who injured others through their violence." O blind cupidity and insane wrath, which so goad us on in such a brief life, then forever steep us in misery. I saw a broad ditch bent into a curve, with all the plain held in its wide embrace, just as my companion had described it. Between the ditch and the foot of the high bank galloped centaurs in file, armed with arrows, as they had when they hunted in the world. Observing us come down, they stood their ground. 3 stepped from the ranks, arrows selected. From that distance one cried, "What punishment have you come down the slope to suffer here? Tell us from there, if not I draw my bow." My master replied, "Our answer will be to Chiron beside you, and not to you, being so headstrong was always your curse." He touched me then, and said, "That is Nessus, who died for the lovely Deionara, and made his blood the means of his revenge. In the middle, head bowed, is great Chiron, the one who trained Achilles in his youth. The third is Pholus, known for drunken wrath. The centaurs run in thousands round the ditch, shooting souls who rise further from the blood than the level allotted by their sins." We moved in closer to the agile beasts. Chiron took an arrow, and with its notch combed back a beard to reveal his massive mouth, saying to the others, "Have you noticed how the one behind moves what he touches? A dead man's feet are not wont to do that." My good guide, already next to his chest, the place where his two natures merge, answered, "He is indeed alive, and so alone. I am here to guide him through the dismal pit. Necessity, not pleasure, brings him here. One came down from singing Hallelujah to assign this special office to me. He is no felon, nor I a robber. But by that power which enables me to travel along such a savage road, lend us one of your band to lead the way to the ford and carry him on his back. He is no spirit that can go by air." Then Chiron turned to his right to Nessus, and said, "Go and be their guide as they ask. If another troop protests, chase them off." Safe with our new escort, we moved along the margin of that seething crimson flood in which the tormented souls shrieked and boiled. Immersed to the eyebrows, the centaur spoke. "These are the tyrants' chiefs, whose hands in life clutched at plunder and dripped with bloody gore. Here they lament their pitiless misdeeds. Here are Alexander and Dionysius, who caused such years of grief to Sicily. He with the black hair on his forehead is Azzolino. The other blonde one is Abitso of Este, who truly was slain by his stepson up in the world." A little farther on, some people emerged, enough to lift their throats above the boiling stream. Then I saw the spirits who held their heads and chests above the flow of the river. I knew the names of quite a number here. Gradually the blood became shallower, until it simmered at the feet alone, and here we found our passage through the ditch. "Just as in this direction you've seen the boiling stream recede," the centaur said. "In the other, the bottom sinks away deeper and still deeper till it comes once more to where the tyrants lament their fortune. There, divine justice torments Attila, who was such a scourge upon the earth, and Pyrrhus and Sextus. Through eternity it milks the tears, loosened by the boiling from Rinie da Cornetto and Rinie Pazzo, who turned the public roads to battlegrounds." Then back he turned, and so recrossed the ford. Canto 13. Nessus had not yet reached the other side before we plunged into a dense forest. No path traced it. The leaves there were not green, but black. The boughs were twisted and knotted, and bore no fruit, but had thorns with poison. Even those savage beasts that roam between Caecina and Cornetto, beasts who hate farmland, will not haunt scrub so dense and harsh. The loathsome harpies construct their nests here, who drove the Trojans from the Strophides, their dismal cries foretelling future trials. They have wide wings, human necks and faces, feet armed with claws, fat and feathered bellies, perching in the strange trees to shriek laments. Here my good master began. "You should know," he said, "you are within the second zone, and shall be so until we reach the dreadful sand. Look carefully around you and see what you would not believe on my word alone." I heard wailing misery from all sides, but couldn't see the souls making the noise. In bewilderment I stopped, lost in thought. I fancy he believed I was thinking that all these voices came from souls who lay concealed, because of us, among the stumps. But then my master said, "If you break off some little branch from any of these trees, your thinking in that way will be cut short." At this I stretched out my hand a little, and from a great thorn bush tore off a twig. Its trunk cried out, "Why are you tearing me?" Then, after some dark-hued blood seeped from it, it cried out again, "Why do you rip me? Have you no feelings of pity at all? We were men once, though now we've become trees. Your hand might have shown us more mercy, had we been no more than the souls of snakes." Like a sapling log, which burns at one end and oozes hissing sap at the other, the stump blurted speech and blood together. I drop it, standing frozen there with fear. The tree spoke. "I was custodian of both the keys of Frederick's heart, turning them so softly to open or close that I displaced almost all others from his confidence. I was most zealous in that splendid post, even to the cost of my sleep and strength. That whore who never turned her harlot's eyes from Caesar's household, the vice of all courts and their common ill, inflamed everyone against me, and then inflamed Augustus, so my many honours became disgrace. In spiteful agitation my spirit thought of dying to escape all scorn, and made me unjust towards my own self. By the roots of this peculiar tree, I swear to you that never once broke faith with my lord, worthy of all honour. Should either of you return to the world, cherish my memory, which still lies low under the stroke that envy dealt to it." The poet listened, then to me. "Now he is silent. Do not lose your chance. Ask him questions if you want to know more." But I said, "Question him again yourself on whatever you believe I should know, for I could not. Such pity chokes my heart." So he began once more. "So that this man may do willingly what you ask him to, speak again, imprisoned soul, and tell us how a soul gets entangled in these knots, and if you can, are any ever freed?" The trunk wheezed heavily, until its breath turned into a form of words. "Briefly now, when the violent spirit leaves the body it has torn itself from, Minos ordains it be sent down as far as the 7th round. It falls into the wood, at no set place, but wherever fortune hurls it, and there it germinates like any ear of corn growing from a sapling into a tree. Then the harpies, feeding upon its leaves, cause it pain, and provide a vent for pain. Like the rest, we shall fetch our empty skins, but we will never put them on again. It is wrong to regain the thing forsworn. We shall trail our bodies here to be hung upon the trees of this most dismal wood, each on the thorns of its tormented shade." While we were still listening to the trunk, thinking perhaps it wished to tell us more, we were startled by some sudden noises, as the hunter hears when wild boar and hunt crashing through the undergrowth come near him, and on our left we saw, scratched and naked, running at furious speed, 2 figures tearing through the tangles and the branches. The one in front cried, "Come quickly, Death!" The other, slow, fearing to be outrun, urged, "Lano, your legs were not so nimble at topmost joust." Then, perhaps because his breath failed him, he crashed into a bush. The wood behind them ran full of bitch-hounds, black and keen, as swift as any greyhound slipped off the leash. They sank their teeth in him who crouched there, tearing at him piece by piece, and carried off his miserable limbs. My guide led me to the bush by the hand, weeping vainly through all its bleeding wounds. "O Giacomo de Sant'Andrea," it said, "what have you gained by making me your screen? How am I to blame for your evil life?" "Who were you, then, who gasps from all these wounds such words of sorrow mingled with your blood?" And he replied, "O spirits who have come to look on this shameful mutilation which has despoiled me of so many leaves, collect them at the foot of this sad bush. My home city was the one which exchanged John the Baptist for its first protector, Mars, who swears he will ensure her misfortune, and were it not there still remains of him some vestiges on the bridge at Arno, those citizens who refounded the place upon the ashes left by Attila would have laboured at their work in vain. As for me, I made my house my gallows." Canto 14. Love for my native city obliged me to gather up the strewn leaves and restore them to the voice which was already fading. From there we came upon the boundary separating the 2nd and 3rd zone, to see God's justice in dreadful action. To make these new things clear, I should explain we had arrived at a wide plain whose bed rejected all plant life. All around it, the dismal wood surrounds it like a wreath, in turn encircled by the stream of blood. Right on the verge, we checked our steps. The space was an expanse of deep, dry sand, not unlike that once trod by Cato's feet. God's vengeance! How afraid you ought to be, everyone who reads of what I saw there. Troop upon troop of naked souls I saw, wailing, deeply wretched, each troop subject, it seemed, to its own special penalty. For some lay stretched out supine on the ground. Some sat huddled, crouching. Others wandered incessantly back and forth. Roaming souls were the most numerous, and those laid out to suffer were the least, although their pain was greater, and they uttered louder cries. Broad, drifting flakes of fire fell slowly down, just as the snow descends on windless Alps, or those falling flames Alexander saw, crossing the torrid lands of India, drop unbroken on his army underground, where he ordered that his army's legions should stamp upon the soil, because the fire was best extinguished while in single flakes. So the heat fell here, uninterrupted, whereby the sand like tinder under steel was set on fire, inflicting twice the pain. Not for one moment paused the frantic dance of miserable hands, now here, now there, beating out flames of newly fallen fire. I began then. Master, whom nothing dares resist, except the devils who rushed out and opposed us at the entrance gate, who is that great spirit who does not heed the fire, lying disdainful over there, as though he'd never ripen in the rain? That very one, observing that I put a question to my guide concerning him, cried, "What I was alive, that I am now dead." Then my leader spoke with more energy than I had ever heard before. "O Capaneus, your suffering is greater because your pride is still unextinguished. No torment short of your own rage would be a pain sufficient to equal your wrath." Then turning to me, explained more gently, saying, "He was among the 7 kings who besieged Thebes. He seems as before to mock God and hold him in great disdain. As I said to him, his spiteful words will make the decorations on his chest. Now follow on behind me, taking care not to put your feet on the burning sand, but keep in tight by the edge of the trees." We carried on without a word, to where a narrow stream comes gushing from the woods. Even now, thinking of its reddish tinge, I shudder. Just like the Bulikami spring, from which the stream shared by the prostitutes flows across the sand, this rivulet flowed its bed, and both the banks were made of stone, and I saw that our passage lay by there. "In all I have shown you, since we entered that gate to which nobody is denied, your eyes have seen nothing as important as this stream, quenching all that flames above it." So said my guide to me. I asked him then to satisfy the appetite he whet. He went on. "In the middle of the sea lies a wasteland that bears the name of Crete, under whose king the world was once pure. There is a mountain named Ida, once blessed with leafy streams, now all dry and withered. Within that mountain stands an ancient man, massive, erect, back towards Dalmatia, facing Rome as though it were his mirror. His head is made of finest gold, his arms and breast are pure silver. From there is brass down to where his body forks. After that, choice iron, except the right foot of baked clay, on which he puts more weight than the other. A crack runs through each part, except the gold, a fissure from which dripping tears connect at his feet and erode away the rock. They take their course, sliding from stone to stone, forming acheron, Styx, and phlegathon. Then, through this narrow stream descending, to the spot where nothing further sinks, they form Cocytus. What that pool may be you shall see, so I will not speak of it here." I said, "If this rivulet starts above, in our world, why does it only show now?" And he, "You know the place is circular. Although you have descended this far down, circling left, you have not done a circuit. So if some novel sight appears to us, it should not paint surprise upon your face." "And what about Lethe and Phlegathon?" I asked then. "You ignore the former one and say the other is formed by these tears." "Your questions please me, all of them," he said. "But the boiling red stream should solve that one. Lethe you will see but outside this abyss, there where the spirits go to bathe themselves, when their repented sin has been removed." He added, "Now it is time to quit the wood. Follow close, these margins stay unburnt, offering us a pathway. Above them all the flaming vapour is extinguished." Canto 15. One of these hard margins now leads us on, as a cloud of steam hangs over the brook, protecting the banks and stream from fire. Just as between Bruges and Vicent, Flemings, fearing the flood that burst upon them, build their great dikes and banks to repulse the sea. And like the Paduans along the Brenta, in order to protect their towns and forts against the melting snows of Chiarentana, so these were made, though not as high or broad, by whoever had engineered them. We were already so far from the wood that had I dared to turn and look behind, I could have seen no trace of it at all, when a company of spirits appeared, coming along the bank, staring at us. Just as in the twilight beneath a new moon, men peer to identify each other. They squinted at us, knitting their eyebrows like some old tailor at the needle's eye. I was looked at this way by these strange souls, till one recognized me and grabbed my sleeve, crying, "This is marvellous!" As he reached, I searched beneath his roasted face to see if his burns would not exclude my mind's recollection of him. I leaned my face towards his and answered, "Ser Brunetto, you in this place?" He replied, "Oh, my son, don't object if Brunetto Latini lets his band continue on and turns back to stay with you a while." I said to him, "I beg you to. If you wish me to sit with you, I shall, if my guide permits it." "Son," he said, "if we stop for a moment, then we must lie flat for 100 years, forbidden to brush off the flakes of fire. So keep moving. I'll stay at your heels and catch up with my company later, wailing their never-ending punishment." I dared not step down from my path to go level with him, but held my head bowed down, like someone pacing in reflective thought. "What chance or destiny," he began, "brings you down here before your days are up? And who is this that guides you on the road?" "In the brighter life above," I replied, "I found myself in a valley quite lost, before my time had fully run its course. Yesterday at dawn I turned back from it, and as I was returning he arrived to lead me back home along this path. He said to me, 'If you follow your star, you cannot fail to reach that glorious port, if I judged rightly when my life was fair. Had it not been that I died so early, I would have tried to help you in your work, seeing that heaven is so kind to you. But that ungrateful and malignant crowd who came from Fiesole years ago and still have rocks and mountains in their blood will become enemies for your good deeds.' Had all my prayers been granted," I answered, "you would not yet be banished from humanity. For etched in my mind, and how my heart is saddened with it now, is your image, loving and fatherly, when in the world hour by hour you taught me how man may come to immortality. While I live, it's only just my words shall speak the thanks that I owe to you. I'll write what you say of my destiny. Keep it with other words of my future, for there is a lady, should I reach her, who will understand and interpret them. This much at least let me make clear to you. As long as my conscience does not chide me, I'm ready for fortune, come what may. It's not the first time I've been promised luck, so let fortune keep her wheel spinning round, and let the peasant still wield his shovel." My master turned, looked back, and remarked, "The careful listener learns from what he hears." But none the less I carry on talking by asking Ser Brunetto which members among his group were the most eminent. He said to me, "To know of some is good. Silence is more seemly of the others. Time is short, and they are many. Briefly, let me say they were all clerics, or men of letters of reputation, all marred by the same sin of sodomy. Priscian proceeds with that company, and Francesco da Corso. Had you craved for such lusty filth, you might have seen he who the servant of servants had transferred from Arno to Bacchiglione, where he left behind the body he abused. I would say more, but I can't walk further, nor speak longer, for I see there coming a new plume of smoke rising from the sand, and I may not mix with those that come now. I would recommend my Tresor to you. I still live on in that. I ask no more." Then, turning back, he ran like one of those who raced across the open countryside to win the cloth of green in Verona, and seemed more the winner than the loser.